from pain to paradise. I want to begin tonight by simply stating to all of us that the highlight inside of the Bible is not an event, but the highlight inside of the Bible is a person. That person is not Noah, that person is not David, that person is not Solomon, but that person is Jesus the Christ, Son of the living God. Jesus was absolutely amazing during his tenure on earth, primarily because of the miracles that Jesus performed. He healed the sick, raised the dead, gave sight to the blind, unstopped deaf ears, performed miracle after miracle after miracle. He's amazing not just because of his miracles, but he's also amazing because of the kind of miracles that he performs. In Mark chapter number 4, verses 35 through 41, Jesus proves himself to be a meteorologist, be it that he's Lord over nature. Would you not believe that this same Jesus in Mark chapter number 4, verses 35 through 41, finds him and his disciples on a stormy sea, and in the middle of the storm, when they wake Jesus up, he speaks to the wind, speaks to the waves. He says, "Shut up, be quiet, peace be still," and even the winds and the waves obey him. The elements and the weather obey Jesus, which says that he's absolutely amazing, number one, because he shows himself to be a meteorologist. He's amazing not just because he does miracles as a meteorologist, but when it is that you jaywalk to Mark chapter number 5, verses 1 through 19, he's amazing, number two, because he shows himself to be Lord over demons, due to the fact that he's not just a meteorologist, but he's also a psychologist. How do I know that he's a psychologist, or how do I know that he's a psychiatrist? As soon as he gets to the other side of the sea, there's a man who has a legion of demons who comes to Jesus. This man has so many demons that his mind is messed up. You understand that this man in Mark chapter number 5 has a messed up mind because he's alive, but he's living in the cemetery. Many of us are just like this man. You are alive, but you can't get anywhere because you keep hanging around dead people. You hang around people who have eyes but are unable to see. You hang around people who have ears but are unable to hear. You hang around people who have limbs but are unable to respond. And the Bible declares that when it comes to Jesus, Jesus cast the devil out of this man. And when he cast the devil out of this man is sitting and fully clothed in his right mind. At first, he was not inside of his right mind, because no person who's alive would live inside of the cemetery. No person who enjoys life would entertain suicidal thoughts as this man did, because the Bible declares that it's not the white man killing him, but he's cutting himself with stones. He's in a high place because he's on a mountain, but he's still not happy because night and day he's crying all at the same time. Somebody shout, he's crying. I need you to say it real ghetto. Somebody shout, he crying in. He's in a high place, yet he's crying all at the same time. He is not happy, which says to all of us, high places don't make you happy. He's not in his right mind, but when Jesus cast the demons out of his man, the Bible declares he's sitting and fully clothed in his right mind, which makes Jesus absolutely awesome. Number two, not just because he's a meteorologist, but number two, Jesus is a psychiatrist. He's not just Lord over nature, but he's also Lord over demons. Jesus was absolutely amazing, not just because he's a psychiatrist. Number three, he proves himself to be a gynecologist. How do I know that he's a gynecologist? Immediately after he cast the demon out of this man in Mark chapter number 5, here comes a woman with an issue of blood. The Bible declares she's been bleeding for 12 long years. This is not any kind of bleeding. She's on her menstrual cycle, and she cannot stop it for 12 long years. She runs into Jesus and does not touch him. She touches the hem of his garment. And immediately her infirmity is dried up. What amazes me is not that she's healed, but that she's healed and she don't even touch Jesus. She touches something that is touching him, which says that sometimes when you don't have a direct connection with Jesus, you need to be in connection with somebody who has a connection with Jesus, and if you touch them, you might get healed. Immediately her infirmity dries up. After she spends all of her money on doctors, her situation doesn't get any better. It grows worse. Her infirmity dries up, and he proves himself to be Lord over sickness. He's absolutely amazing because in this instance, he shows himself to be a gynecologist. He's amazing, number 4, not just because he's a meteorologist, not just because he's a psychiatrist, not just because he's a gynecologist, but when it is that you jaywalk to Mark chapter number 5, verses 35 through 43, he now proves himself to be a pediatrician. How do I know he's a pediatrician? There's a synagogue ruler by the name of Jairus who has a daughter who's sick unto death. Jesus starts trotting his feet towards the house of Jairus, but on his way to the house, this woman with the issue of blood touches him, stops Jesus dead in his tracks. By the time he gets to the house of Jairus, the girl has gone from just being sick to now she's dead. When he walks inside of the house, the first thing that he does is put out all the doubters. Why did he put out the doubters? He put out the doubters because Jesus understands that in order to perform a miracle, just because you have people in attendance does not mean they are in agreement. In other words, I don't just need folk in attendance, I need some folk in agreement. Put out all the doubters, speaks to the girl. He says, Talitha Kumi, which is translated, damsel, I say unto you, arise. And a dead girl gets up at the word of Jesus. Somebody just missed it. A dead girl gets up at the word of Jesus. If a dead person can obey Jesus, what's wrong with us? If a dead person can obey Jesus, what's wrong with us who have the activity of our limbs, who have the sight inside of our eyes, who have the senses inside of our nerves? If a dead person can obey Jesus, then surely we should be able to obey Jesus. He's absolutely amazing because of his miracles. But in spite of all of his miracles are not his purpose. His purpose, according to Matthew chapter number 1, verse 21, is to die to save his people from their sins. I'm going to say it again. I need you to understand this on tonight. He's amazing because of his miracles, but his miracles are not his purpose. His purpose was announced at his birth. According to Matthew chapter number 1, verse 21, his purpose is to die to save his people from their sins. So when Jesus was born, the angel announced his purpose. The angel said that Jesus came for the sole reason, for the sole purpose, to die to save his people from their sins. In Matthew chapter number 1, verse 21, we see the birth of Jesus. But in Luke chapter number 23, Jesus is at the end of his life. And when Jesus gets to the end of his life, Jesus is now walking in the fulfillment of his purpose because Jesus is hanging on the cross. He's hanging on the cross with nails inside of his hand. He's hanging on the cross with nails inside of his feet. He's hanging on the cross with thorns inside of his head. He's hanging on the cross, and you can't even recognize Jesus at this particular moment in time. They spit on Jesus, whipped him, they beat him until he's unrecognizable, yet he's in pain. But in spite of his pain, he's walking in his purpose, because his purpose is to die to save his people from their sins. What do you do when you want to fulfill your purpose, but pain is connected to your purpose? What do you do when you want to walk in the thing that God's ordained for you to walk in, but pain is connected to it? Many of us want to obey God until we experience pain inside of our lives. Such is the case with Jesus, the Christ, Son of the living God. He's walking in his purpose because Jesus is hanging on the cross. And as he's hanging on the cross, he's dying to save his people from their sins. Not only is he hanging on the cross, but Jesus, like many of us, when he's on the cross, is experiencing the fight of his life. Tell the person beside you, I'm in the fight of my life. I need you to say it one more time to the whole east side hears you. Somebody say it again. I'm in the fight of my life. At his birth, the angel announces his purpose, but at the end of his life, when he's walking in the fulfillment of his purpose, he's in the middle of pain because pain is connected to his purpose. But not only is pain connected to his purpose, because he's walking in his purpose, Jesus is in the fight of his life. He's in the fight of his life because he's dying on the cross. He's in the fight of his life because he's fighting for my life. He's in the fight of his life because he's fighting for your life. That says to all of us a few things. The first thing that it says to us is that if you're going to be a Christian, coming to church doesn't make you a Christian no more than sitting in a garage makes you a... I said it enough times, somebody knows exactly what I'm talking about. Let's say it again. Coming to church doesn't make you a Christian no more than sitting in a garage makes you a... So if you're going to be a Christian, it means to be Christ-like. So if I'm Christ-like, hear this clearly, and Jesus went through the fight of his life, then what makes you think that just because you saved, sanctified, filled with the Holy Spirit, and you come to church every time the doors are open, that you are exempt from going through the fight of your life? Many of us are dressed up on the outside, but in spite of you being dressed up on the outside, on the inside, you want to fight. For some of us, the fight's inside of our marriage. For some of us, the fight's on our job. For some of us, the fight is a sickness inside of our bodies. You look better than what you are fighting at this particular moment in time. Number one, if Jesus went through the fight of his life, you're going to experience the fight of your life. What amazes me is not that he's in the fight of his life, but Jesus ain't in this fight by himself, because Jesus is not the only one hanging on the cross inside of the text. Jesus is hanging between two thieves. One thief is on one side, another thief is on the other side, which means that Jesus is in the fight of his life, but he's not alone in the fight of his life because other people are hanging on the cross alongside Jesus. Ain't it just like Satan that when you in the fight of your life to make you feel like you're the only one going through what you're going through? Ain't it just like Satan that when you in the fight of your life to make you feel like you're the only one going through depression, you're the only one going through sickness, you're the only one dealing with low self-esteem, you're the only one with baby mama drama, you're the only one who dealing with this, you're the only one who dealing with that? Somebody shout, the devil is a liar. You are not the only one. Why do you think the Bible declares in 1 Corinthians chapter number 10 verse 13, it says, there is no temptation that is taken us but such as is common to man. There is no fight that is taken us but such as is common to man. What Paul is saying to the church at Corinth, you ain't the first and you won't be the last. This ain't no new fight. But then he says, but God is faithful. He won't suffer you to be tempted beyond what you are able to handle. But with the temptation, with the fight, God will provide a way of escape. But the next thing that this says to all of us, and I want you to write this down, ladies and gentlemen, is that the fight of my life, hear this clearly, is oftentimes connected to my God-given purpose. Put it up so everybody can see it. It's slide number 1. The fight of my life is oftentimes connected to my God-given purpose. His purpose is announced at his birth. His purpose is to die to save his people from their sins. At the end of his life, he's walking in the fulfillment of his purpose because he's hanging on the cross, dying to save his people from their sins. And the question has to be raised, if Jesus did all this good and performed all of these miracles, out of all the people who could be in the fight of their life, why would Jesus be in the fight of his life? He's in the fight of his life not because he didn't do good. He's in the fight of his life because his fight is connected to his purpose. Stop allowing the enemy to hang stuff over your head and make you feel like you're going through what you're going through because of something you didn't do right. Sometimes I'm in the fight of my life, not because I did not do the right thing, but sometimes I'm in the fight of my life because my fight can be connected to my purpose. Somebody shout, my purpose. What amazes me, ladies and gentlemen, is that in Luke chapter number 23, verses 39 through 43, Jesus, in the fight of his life, is hanging between two thieves who are also in the fight of their life. I'm going to say it again. Jesus, in the fight of his life, is hanging between two thieves who are also in the fight of their life. Now watch this. Jesus is in the fight of his life because purpose got him in it. The thieves are in the same fight of their life, Not because their fight is connected to their purpose, but simply because their fight is connected to them being the problem. Jesus is on the cross because it was part of his purpose. The angel announced it at his birth. But the thieves are on the same cross, not because it's their purpose, it's because they're being punished for stealing from people. So what happens when I can't say I'm in this fight because of my purpose, but what happens when I'm in this fight because I'm the problem? Y'all ain't gonna talk to me. I'm going to say it again. What happens when I'm in this fight, not because it's part of my purpose? What happens when I'm in this fight because I am the problem? Y'all know how we do. We want to blame everybody else for our situation. I'm in this because of what my daddy did. I'm in this because of what my mama did. I'm in this because my friends ain't treat me right. I'm in this because of what the pastor said, what the doctor said, what the lawyer said, what the teacher said. I'm in this, quote unquote, because of my haters. Everybody claim they got haters. But what happens when you can't blame your pastor, your mama, your friends, your enemies, or your haters? What happens when I'm the problem? Has anybody ever had to admit, sometimes I'm in a fight of my life, not because of anybody else. This is because of my own bad decisions and my own poor choices. Okay, I'm the only one in here ever made a bad decision. I'm the only one in here ever made a poor choice. Okay, I wish y'all would just be real and take out the church man. You come to church like you ain't never did nothing wrong. Like you ain't never fallen short of the glory of God. Like you ain't never sinned. Like you always crossed every T and dotted every I. If you live long enough, you're going to make some bad decisions. You're going to make some poor choices. You're going to do some stuff you regret. You're going to do some stuff you wish you could erase. Sometimes I'm in a fight of my life, not because of my God-given purpose. Sometimes I'm in a fight of my life because I did it, I caused it. Somebody shout, I'm the problem. Now watch this. Jesus is in the fight of his life because he's convicted about his purpose. His purpose is to die to save his people from their sins. And even though pain is a part of it, he's so convicted that this is what he's supposed to do, he goes to the cross anyway. Does everybody hear what I'm saying? So sometimes when I'm in a fight of my life, it's because of my conviction. I'm experiencing this challenge, this hardship, and it's absolutely tough. I feel like quitting. I feel like giving up. But it's my conviction that causes me to keep going when I feel like quitting. All right, so watch this. Jesus is in the fight of his life because he's convicted about his purpose. The thieves are in the fight of their lives because they're being corrected for their problems. I wish somebody could hear what I'm saying. Two people in the same fight for different reasons. Two groups of people in the same fight for different reasons. One is in the fight on the cross because he's convicted about his purpose. The other two are in the fight on the cross because they're being corrected because they're the problem. So whenever you're in the fight of your life, you got to ask yourself this question: is this fight because of my conviction, or is this fight because of God's correction? We don't like to be corrected. Nobody wants to be told you're wrong. Nobody wants to be told you should have did it this way. But guess what? The Bible declares in Hebrews chapter number 13 that God chastens those who he loves. He says, if I don't correct you, you're a bastard and you don't have a father. You don't belong to me. I only correct my God don't whoop other folk kids. He only corrects his kids. And he says, I'm correcting you, not because I'm trying to punish you, not because I'm mad at you. He says, my correction is to bring the peaceable fruit of righteousness inside of your life. Stop thinking when God corrects you that he's mad at you. God ain't mad at you. God took all of his wrath out on his son when he should have took it out on us. It wasn't that God wasn't mad. He was mad for every time that we went left when he told us to go right. He was mad for all of the sins that we committed, but he satisfied his wrath not by taking it out on us. He satisfied his wrath by taking it out on his son, Jesus Christ, when Jesus is down on the cross. So any correction thereafter is not because God is mad. He's trying to yield the peaceable fruit of righteousness inside of your life, which says, parents, if we parent the way that God parents, number one, you correct your children. But when you correct your children, you don't do it because you're angry. You do it to make them better. I wish somebody could hear what I'm saying. If I'm going to be like God, I correct my children. But when I correct my children, I don't do it because I'm angry. I do it to make my child better. Three things you got to remember whenever you find yourself in the fight of your life. Let's roll. Number one, when I'm in a fight of my life, number one, I must remember I don't have to prove myself to other people. Tell the person beside you, when you are in the fight of your life, don't try to prove yourself to another person. I need you to say it real ghetto. Tell them, don't try to prove yourself to another person. Y'all so silly. Jesus is on the cross. And would you believe that when Jesus is on the cross, many people, along with the thieves, are mocking Jesus. And this is what they're saying. If you be the Christ, prove it. You said you the king. If you the king, how you the king now? You on the cross just like us. If you are the Christ, if you are the anointed one, the Messiah, the awaited one, the Son of the living God, if you're the Savior of the world, prove it. Save yourself and save us also. They're trying to put that do it fluid inside of Jesus. You know, sometimes you don't have a mind to do certain things until certain people put that do it fluid inside of you. Have you thinking you can do anything. Start acting all out of character. But guess what? Jesus didn't fall for the trick. Jesus could have called down a legion of angels to save him, to save everybody. He could have called down a legion of angels to wipe out everybody. But instead of him trying to prove himself to other people, he never said a mumbling word. Now, why is it that he never said a mumbling word like the old people say? I believe he never said a mumbling word because this is not the first time people try to get him to prove himself and attack his identity. In Luke 23, he's at the end of his ministry. And at the end of his ministry, they say, prove yourself. But you remember in Matthew chapter number 4, he's at the beginning of his ministry. And at the beginning of his ministry, Satan tempts Jesus in the wilderness. And with every temptation, he's trying to get Jesus to prove himself. He's attacking his identity. He says, if you be the Son of God, turn these stones into bread. Prove yourself. His father already said, this is my beloved son in whom I'm well pleased at the end of Matthew chapter number 3 at the baptism of Jesus. And here it is, Satan is tempting Jesus, trying to get Jesus to question what his father has already said about him. If you be the Son of God, prove it. Turn these stones into bread. Prove it. Jump off the pinnacle of this temple. The angels will have charge over you and lift you up, lest you bear your foot against a stone. He says, prove it. Bow down and worship me. I give you everything that you see. Now watch this. I understand why Satan tried to get Jesus to prove himself at the beginning of Jesus' ministry. But it makes no sense to me why the thief on the cross would try to get Jesus to prove himself at the end of his ministry. You remember at the beginning of his ministry, Jesus does not have a following. Jesus has never had a message. Jesus has never had a ministry. Jesus has never performed a miracle. I can understand Satan saying, prove yourself, because Jesus hadn't done anything yet. But you mean to tell me at the end of his ministry, after he turned water into wine, you still saying prove yourself? You mean at the end of his ministry, after he heals a man with a withered hand, he says, stretch out your hand. The man stretches forth his hand, and immediately his hand starts to grow back. He did miraculous wonders like that, and you still saying, prove yourself. This is the reason when you're in the fight of your life, stop trying to prove yourself to people. Because if your past track record don't cause them to believe who you are, then what makes you think that if you succumb to their temptation and do one more thing, they're going to believe who God has called you to be? If you don't believe that I am who God says that I am right now, I ain't got to prove not a nan other thing to nobody, because if you don't believe it, you ain't going to never believe it. Tell the person beside, stop trying to prove yourself. Around here proving yourself to try to please people. You can't please people. No matter how hard you try, you can do everything that they tell you to do verbatim, and you still can't please them. All right, can I prove it? Can I prove it? All right, all right. When I got out of high school, everybody asked, what college you going to? Because I was the last out of my group to choose a college. And then when I chose Kentucky State University, why you choose that college? Got to Kentucky State, then they asked this question, when you going to choose a major? Chose biology, why you choose that major? Then I graduated from college. They say, when you gonna get married? I married my wife. Why you marry her? Then they start asking, when you gonna have kids? Now we got 7 kids. Why y'all keep having all them kids? The only thing I'm trying to tell you, you can never please people. You can never prove yourself to people. If you try to prove yourself to people, you're going to lose the fight of your life. So number one, when I'm in the fight of my life, I don't have to prove myself to other people. Speak it in your language. Don't prove yourself to another person. Number two, everybody say number two. The choices I make when I'm in the fight of my life can determine my victory or my defeat. You got to ask God to give you wisdom to make the right choices. Tell the person beside you, my choices matter. Tell them again, my choices matter. All right, watch this. 2 thieves in the same fight hanging on the cross. One thief chooses to mock Jesus. He dies and go to hell. The other thief chooses to meet Jesus. Says, Lord, when you come into your kingdom, hook your boy up. He says, when you come into your kingdom, don't forget about your boy. He says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. So one thief mocks Jesus. He dies and go to hell. The other thief, hear this clearly, meets Jesus. He dies, spends eternity in heaven. Because Jesus says, I am the resurrection. Whoever believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live again. Death is not the end for me. It's just the beginning. 2 people in the same situation, but different outcomes. Because they make different decisions. One decides to mock Jesus, goes to hell. The other decides to meet Jesus, goes to heaven. And this for everybody. You in the fight of your life, you know other people in the same fight, and Satan is telling you, and people are telling you, yours going to end up the same negative way that theirs ended up. Just because we in the same fight don't mean that we have to have the same outcome. I can make different decisions while I'm in the same fight. Does everybody hear what I'm saying? So watch this. Number 2, the choices I make determine whether or not I have victory or defeat in the fight of my life. Last but not least, number 3. Everybody say number 3. When I'm in the fight of my life, God can give me strength to help other people. I'm going to say it again. When I'm in the fight of my life, God can give me strength in the middle of my own fight to help other people. Now watch this. Jesus is hanging on the cross. And while he's hanging on the cross, he got nails in his hand, nails in his feet, He got thorns in his head. They beat Jesus till he's unrecognizable. They pierce him in the side. Blood and water come streaming down out of his body, oozing out of his body. He's in a fight of his life. He's in physical pain because of the nails. He's in emotional pain because his best friend Judas has just betrayed him. He's in spiritual pain because he's carrying the weight of the sins of the world. And would you not believe that when he's in his own pain, he has a right to be self-centered and selfish? One thief reaches out, asks Jesus for help, says, remember me when you come into your kingdom. In other words, he's saying, save me, Lord. How am I supposed to save you when I'm dealing with my own stuff? How am I supposed to help you when I'm in my own fight? Anybody ever felt like that before? You in the middle of your own fight? I feel like quitting. Well, I feel like quitting. You got the nerve to ask me for some help. You in the middle of your fight, barely can pay your bills. Somebody asks, can I get 5 on it? You in the middle of your fight, you sick inside of your body. Somebody asks you to come pray for them. What happened when you in the fight of your life and somebody says, I need you? But guess what? Whenever you're in the fight of your life, a relationship with God does not keep you from the fight of your life. It causes God to be with you when you are in the fight of your life. And when God is with you, when you are in the middle of the fight of your life, as crazy as it sounds, when you're in your fight, he'll give you strength to help other people. When you are in your fight, he'll give you the strength to be a blessing to other people. I'm praying for everyone in here under the sound of my voice. You look good on the outside, but you don't have to hide your fight. Maybe the fight's inside of your home. Some of us, it's our marriage. It's your husband, it's your wife. Some of us are in World War Me fight. It's me. Maybe it's a sickness in your body. Maybe it's your bank account being negative. Maybe it's poverty. Maybe it's unemployment. Maybe it's a dream deferred. You had a dream of doing something great. Your dream got put on the back burner. You're fighting to get back. Whatever your fight is, know that a relationship with Jesus doesn't keep you from it, but he'll be with you in it. And when he's with you in it, he'll give you wisdom to make the right decisions. Not only does he give you wisdom to make the right decisions, he'll give you strength to help other people. Everybody stand to your feet.